She carried the weight of the world on her shoulders until it nearly crushed her. This is Maya's story, a story of exhaustion, surrender, and the God who restores us when we can't carry it all alone. Maya's shift had ended 3 hours ago. At least it was supposed to. But there she was, still charting notes in the dim light of the nurse's station, her shoulders tight, her eyes burning from the fluorescent glow overhead. Every beep, every cry, every clipped voice from the doctors had burrowed its way under her skin. She signed her name on one last form, then let the pen slip from her fingers. "Done," she whispered, though it felt like a lie. Because in her line of work, there was no done. There was only until the next emergency. She dragged her tired body to the locker room, changed out of her scrubs, and slung her oversized bag over her shoulder. The strap cut into her skin, heavy from charts she hadn't finished, papers she swore she'd look at later, and a stethoscope she couldn't bear to leave behind. It wasn't just a bag. It was every mistake she replayed on the ride home, every patient she couldn't save, every whispered "I'm sorry" she carried on her lips long after she left the hospital. By the time she reached the parking lot, the sun had already slipped behind the buildings, painting the sky in streaks of purple and gray. Her breath came out in little clouds, and she pulled her jacket tighter around her, though the chill wasn't just in the air. It was inside her. When she finally pushed open the door of her tiny apartment, the silence greeted her like a wall. No voices, no laughter, not even the hum of a TV. She hadn't turned it on in weeks. She let her keys clatter onto the counter and dropped her bag by the door. It hit the floor with a dull thud, and somehow the sound echoed inside her. Heavy, unwanted, still there. Maya sank onto the couch, her body melting into the cushions like she could disappear into them. For a long moment, she just stared at the ceiling, the shadows from the streetlight outside flickering across the room. Her gaze drifted back to the bag by the door. It sat there, waiting for her, almost taunting her. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't have the strength to ignore it. She buried her face in her hands. Her voice came out small, cracked, like a whisper she hadn't planned to say aloud. "God, I can't keep doing this." Her throat tightened. "I'm so tired. I don't even know who I am outside of this weight I'm carrying. Every day I try to hold it all together, and every night it feels like I'm breaking." The words tumbled out, raw and messy, not the neat prayers she sometimes tried to say in church. This was different. This was desperation. She thought of the patients she'd lost, the one who'd slipped away despite every machine, every effort. The young man whose mother had looked at Maya with pleading eyes, as if she had the power to reverse the inevitable. The way she'd gone home that night and replayed every second, convinced she'd missed something, done something wrong. Maya's tears spilled, hot and unrelenting. The silence of the apartment only made them louder. She pressed her palms into her eyes, as if she could block it all out. But the weight was still there, always there. Her gaze flicked to the clock on the wall. Nearly midnight. Another shift loomed tomorrow. Another day of smiling when she wanted to scream, of comfort in families while her own heart fractured. She thought about quitting, about walking away. But what else was there? Nursing wasn't just her job. It was who she thought she was. And yet, it was crushing her. Her voice broke again, trembling in the quiet room. "God, if you're there, I need you." Because I can't carry this alone anymore." The words hung heavy in the silence. The clock ticked. The city buzzed faintly outside. But inside, Maya sat with nothing but her tears and the bag by the door, feeling like the world had asked too much of her, and she had nothing left to give. Maya didn't plan to stop. She was just walking home after another long shift, her bag dragging at her side like an anchor, when she saw it again. The little stone church she always passed but never entered. The stained glass windows glowed faintly from the inside, spilling warm color onto the sidewalk. She slowed her steps, just for a second. Her body screamed to keep moving, to get home, to collapse. But something in her chest tugged. Before she could talk herself out of it, Maya climbed the steps and pushed open the heavy wooden door. Inside, the air was cooler, quieter. The world outside fell away, replaced with the faint scent of old wood and candle wax. The sanctuary was empty, except for a single figure at the front. A man knelt near the altar, hammering a loose board into place. The sound echoed softly in the stillness. Maya hesitated, hovering near the back pew. She hadn't been in a church in years, not really. She didn't know what she expected: lightning to strike, or someone to demand what she was doing there. Instead, the man looked up and smiled. Not surprised, not suspicious, just gentle. "Evening," he said, standing and brushing dust from his hands. "Didn't mean to scare you with the noise." "I'm fixing this step before someone trips." Maya gave a small nod, clutching her bag. "Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just needed to sit, then sit," he said simply, gesturing to the pews. His voice was calm, steady, the kind of voice that carried no pressure, only invitation. Maya slid into the second pew, setting her bag beside her. She stared at the stained glass, tracing the lines of colored glass with her eyes. The scene showed Jesus carrying a lamb, his face full of compassion. She felt her throat tighten. The man walked closer, wiping his hands on a rag. "Rough day?" he asked. Maya almost laughed, but it came out as more of a sigh. "You could say that." He nodded knowingly, as if he'd heard these words many times before. "Want to talk about it?" She shook her head quickly. "No, I wouldn't even know where to start." "That's fair," he said, settling into the pew across the aisle. "Sometimes it's enough just to be in a place where you don't have to carry everything out loud." Maya glanced at him, surprised by the way his words seemed to press gently against the ache inside her. For a while, they sat in silence. The colors from the stained glass shifted as headlights passed outside, scattering blues and reds across the floor. Finally, she found herself whispering, almost to herself, "I feel like I'm carrying too much. Like no matter how hard I try, it's never enough." His eyes softened, and he leaned forward slightly. "You're not the first to feel that way. And you won't be the last." He let the words settle before adding, "But you don't have to carry it all alone." Maya swallowed hard, her hands tightening around the strap of her bag. "That's easy to say." He gave a faint smile. "It's harder to live." "Trust me, I know. But sometimes, laying it down is the bravest thing you can do." Maya looked at him more closely. He didn't look like a priest. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his hands calloused like someone who worked with them daily. But his eyes, kind, steady, familiar, held something she couldn't ignore. "I'm Daniel," he said, extending his hand. "Pastor here, at least for now." Maya hesitated, then took it. His handshake was firm but gentle. "Maya." Good to meet you, Maya, Daniel said with a quiet nod. And for the first time in a long while, she felt just a little lighter. The hospital was buzzing with its usual chaos. The overhead lights hummed, the intercom crackled with codes as calls, and the steady rhythm of beeping monitors filled every corner. To most people, it was just background noise. But to Maya, it was a constant reminder of how much weight she carried every single day. She moved from room to room, plastering on the professional smile she'd perfected years ago. To the outside world, she looked steady, charting vitals, soothing worried families, juggling tasks without missing a beat. But inside, the cracks were spreading. It started when she stood beside a patient's bed, explaining treatment options to his family. Her voice was calm, her words clear, but then the woman's eyes filled with tears. The way she gripped Maya's hand, desperate, pleading, hit too close. Suddenly, Maya couldn't breathe. Her chest tightened, her pulse raced, and her carefully chosen words blurred into nothing. She excused herself quickly, nearly stumbling as she pushed open the stairwell door. The heavy metal slammed behind her, shutting out the noise of the hospital, but trapping her in another kind of storm. Her back pressed against the cold wall as her breathing turned shallow and frantic. "Not here. Not now," she whispered, but her body didn't listen. Her knees buckled, and she slid down onto the concrete steps. She hugged them close to her chest, rocking slightly, gasping for air that felt too thin. Her hands shook so hard she pressed them against her thighs to keep from losing control. Panic surged through her, louder than any monitor, heavier than any chart. Every mistake she'd ever made, every patient she'd lost, every whispered, "You did all you could," that she never believed. They all came rushing back, screaming in her ears. Tears blurred her vision. Her whole body trembled. It felt like the walls were closing in, like the weight she carried had finally crushed her. Minutes, maybe 10, maybe 30, passed before her breathing slowed. Her cheeks were wet, her throat raw. She dragged herself upright, clinging to the railing until her legs steadied. When she pushed the stairwell door open, she forced her face into something resembling normal. A coworker caught her eye immediately. "You okay?" "You look pale." Maya forced a small laugh, her voice hoarse. "Yeah, just needed some air. Long shift, you know?" The nurse nodded sympathetically, already moving on. But Maya could feel the lie burning in her chest. Because she wasn't fine. She hadn't been fine in a long time. That night, back in her apartment, the silence felt heavier than usual. She curled into the corner of her couch, her bag sitting like a shadow by the door. Her mind replayed the stairwell over and over. The shaking, the gasping, the terrifying loss of control. She thought about the church again. The soft glow of the stained glass, the way Daniel's voice had carried warmth without judgment. For a moment, she almost went back. But then the shame crept in, whispering, "You're too weak. You should be stronger by now. What would he think if he saw you like that?" So she stayed where she was, clutching a throw pillow to her chest like it could hold her together. Across town, Daniel sat at his desk with an open journal. The page stared back at him, blank except for the date. His pen hovered, but no words came. Instead, his eyes drifted to a photograph propped on the shelf. His late wife, smiling in a way that made his chest ache. 3 years had passed since cancer took her, and yet the grief still hit him in waves. Some nights he wondered if he would ever feel whole again. He traced the frame with his fingers and whispered, God, how can I tell people to trust you when I still feel so broken myself? His voice cracked in the quiet. He leaned back, weary, staring at the ceiling. Everyone saw him as strong, the pastor who always had answers, the man who could fix broken steps and guide broken hearts. But in his own heart, cracks still ran deep. Two souls, two different nights. Maya, shaking on her couch, ashamed of her panic. Daniel, alone at his desk, aching from loss. Neither of them knew it yet, but their fractures would soon meet. And sometimes, that's exactly how the light finds its way in. The church was quiet again that evening, the kind of quiet that felt like a blanket over the noise of the world. Maya hadn't planned to go. She'd promised herself she was too busy, too tired, too embarrassed. But somehow, her feet carried her there anyway. She slipped inside and sat near the back, hoping no one would notice. But of course, someone did. Daniel looked up from where he was straightening hymnals in the pews. His expression softened when he saw her. Back again, he said gently, walking over. That's a good sign. Maya managed a tired smile. I don't know about good. Maybe just desperate. Desperate's honest, Daniel replied, sliding into the pew across from her. And honest is a good place to start. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The colored light from the stained glass windows spilled across the floor, shifting as the evening sun dipped lower. Finally, Maya let out a shaky breath. I had a panic attack yesterday, at work. I've had them before, but this one, it scared me. I thought I was fine, but I guess I've just been pretending. Her voice dropped, almost a whisper. I feel like I'm breaking. And if people knew, they'd think I wasn't strong enough. Not cut out for the job. Not cut out for life, really. Her words trembled, but once they started, they wouldn't stop. I see all these families looking at me like I should have the answers, like I can hold everything together. And when I can't, when I lose a patient or forget something, I feel like I've failed, like I'm not enough, like I'll never be enough. Daniel's brow furrowed as he listened, but he didn't interrupt. He just sat there, leaning forward, hands clasped, letting her words fill the quiet space between them. When she finally stopped, embarrassed by how much she'd shared, he nodded slowly. I know that feeling. Maya blinked. You do? His eyes softened, grief flickering in them like a shadow. When my wife was sick, I thought if I prayed harder, believed stronger, did more, maybe I could save her. When she died, I told myself I'd failed. As a husband, as a pastor, as a man of faith. People kept saying, you did all you could, but inside I kept hearing, you weren't enough. Maya's breath caught. She hadn't expected him to understand so deeply. How do you live with that? She asked quietly. Daniel let out a slow exhale, his hands tightening for a moment before relaxing. I don't have perfect answers. But what I've learned is this. God never asked me to carry it all. He never asked me to be the savior of anyone. That's his job. Mine is to trust him, even when I don't understand. He paused, glancing at her. You don't have to be enough for everyone, Maya. You just have to be his. And that's already enough. Maya felt tears sting her eyes again. She turned her face away, embarrassed, but Daniel didn't make her feel small for it. She whispered, more to herself than to him, I don't know how to let go. I've carried the weight so long, I don't even know who I'd be without it. Daniel leaned back, his expression gentle. Maybe that's the point. Maybe God wants to show you who you really are, underneath all the weight. The silence returned, but this time it felt different, less heavy, like a window cracked open in a stuffy room, letting in just a little fresh air. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, Maya didn't feel completely alone in her struggle. And for Daniel, sitting across from her, something shifted too. Maybe his own grief wasn't done weighing on him, but tonight, sharing it, allowing someone else to see the cracks, felt like the beginning of healing. The fluorescent lights of the hospital seemed harsher than usual. Maya pushed through another 12-hour shift, her body moving on autopilot, her mind foggy with exhaustion. She charted vitals, checked medications, and plastered a smile on her face, even though every muscle in her body screamed for rest. Her coworkers joked that she was unstoppable, the strong one, the nurse who never slowed down. If only they knew. By hour 13, her legs felt like lead. By hour 14, her vision blurred. But she kept going, because that's what she did. She kept carrying, kept pushing, kept pouring out more than she had left to give, until her body gave out. It happened in the hallway, just outside a patient's room. 1 second she was walking, the next her knees buckled. Her bag slid off her shoulder and hit the floor with a heavy thud as she crumpled beside it. Voices shouted her name. Someone knelt beside her. The edges of her vision darkened as the noise of the hospital grew distant, muffled. When she woke again, the world was quieter. She was in a bed, not her own, but one in an empty recovery room. The soft beep of a monitor beside her echoed ironically. She, the nurse, now the patient. Her chest tightened with shame. She turned her face toward the wall, blinking back tears. A knock sounded gently at the door. Maya? Her head turned sharply. Daniel stood there, hands in his pockets, concern written across his face. She sat up quickly, cheeks burning. You shouldn't be here. Your coworker called me, Daniel said simply, stepping inside. Said you'd collapsed. Thought you could use a friend. Maya looked away, swallowing hard. I don't need pity. Daniel pulled up a chair and sat, not too close, not too far. His voice was steady. Good. Because I didn't bring pity. I brought presence. The words caught her off guard. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the monitor filled the silence. Finally, Maya whispered, I hate this. I hate being the one who breaks. Everyone depends on me, and now I can't even depend on myself. Her voice cracked as tears slipped down her cheeks. I feel weak and useless and replaceable. Daniel's eyes softened. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. Can I tell you something? Maya shrugged, brushing at her tears. Go ahead. When my wife was sick, Daniel began slowly, I spent months trying to be strong for her. I never let her see me cry, never admitted I was exhausted. I thought if I kept it all together, maybe she would too. He paused, his jaw tightening. But one night, I broke down, right in front of her. And do you know what she said? Maya shook her head. She said, Thank you. I needed to see you're human, too. Maya stared at him, her tears spilling freely now. Daniel continued gently. You don't have to be unbreakable, Maya. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to need help. Carrying everything alone doesn't make you strong. It makes you weary. God never asked you to hold the world on your shoulders. Maya let out a shaky laugh through her tears. Funny. I keep telling myself if I just try harder, I'll be enough. Daniel's voice dropped lower. You're already enough. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And because you belong to him, Maya pressed her palms to her eyes, sobbing quietly. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the need to apologize for her tears. She let them fall, let herself be seen, even in her weakness. Daniel didn't try to fix her. He didn't rush her tears or offer cliches. He just sat there, steady and present, letting her grief pour out like water that had been dammed for too long. When her sobs finally quieted, Maya leaned back against the pillows, utterly drained but strangely lighter. Daniel stood slowly, his voice still soft. Rest, Maya. Just for tonight. Let God carry what you can't. And for once, she didn't argue. She just closed her eyes. The folding chairs in the church basement creaked as people settled in. It wasn't a big group, maybe 8 or 9 people, but the room hummed with quiet conversation, the kind that comes when strangers are learning how to trust one another. Maya hesitated in the doorway, clutching the strap of her lighter bag. She almost turned back. This wasn't her thing, talking to people she didn't know, opening wounds in front of strangers. Then she saw Daniel near the front. His eyes caught hers, steady and encouraging, like he knew she was already halfway out the door in her mind. He gave a small nod. No pressure, just presence. Maya took a breath and stepped inside. They went around the circle, one by one. Each person shared pieces of their story, losses, fears, hopes they were just beginning to reclaim. Maya listened, her hands twisting in her lap, her heart pounding as the introductions came closer to her. Finally, it was her turn. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her throat tightened, her chest heavy. I don't really know what to say, she stammered. A few people smiled gently, waiting. Maya's eyes blurred as she whispered, I feel like I've been carrying everything on my own. And I can't anymore. I've tried to be strong, but I'm not. I can't do this. Her voice broke. I need help. I need God. The words fell into the quiet, raw, and trembling. For a moment, she hated herself for saying them out loud. But then something unexpected happened. No one judged, no one gasped. Instead, the room filled with soft murmurs of agreement, nods, quiet me toos. Daniel spoke gently, his voice carrying over the circle. Maya, that's one of the bravest things you could have said. You're not alone. God never meant for us to carry our burdens in silence. He tells us, cast your cares on me, because I care for you. Tears streamed down her cheeks. And then, one by one, the group gathered around her. A woman placed a hand on her shoulder. Another knelt nearby. Their presence was warm, steady. Someone began to pray aloud, simple words full of sincerity. God, we lift up our sister. We ask you to give her rest, to lift the weight she can't carry, to remind her she is loved and held by you. Maya sobbed, but the sobs felt different this time. Not suffocating, but releasing. For the first time, she let it out. All of it. The grief, the shame, the exhaustion she'd hidden for so long. And as she wept, she felt something loosen in her chest. It was like unclenching fists she hadn't realized were tight, like setting down a heavy bag she'd been dragging for miles. In the stillness of that prayer, she felt lighter. Not fixed, not perfect, but lighter. When the group finally sat back down, Maya wiped her face, embarrassed. Sorry, she whispered. Daniel shook his head. Don't apologize. That wasn't weakness, Maya. That was strength. Real strength. The kind that comes from letting go. She nodded, her heart still pounding, but softer now. The room didn't feel like a circle of strangers anymore. It felt like safety. For the first time in years, she realized she wasn't carrying everything alone. The next morning, sunlight streamed into Maya's apartment, warm and golden, falling across her face as if it had been waiting for her. She blinked awake slowly, her body still heavy from the week, but her spirit lighter. For the first time in months, she didn't wake to the shrill buzz of her alarm, heart already racing before her feet hit the floor. She didn't wake rehearsing tasks in her head or dreading the long hours ahead. Instead, she just lay there for a moment, listening to her own breathing. Steady, calm, free of the usual weight. It wasn't that her life had magically changed overnight. Her shifts were still long, her patients still many, and her apartment still small and quiet. But something in her had shifted. It was as if she'd finally loosened her grip on the bag she carried everywhere, the invisible one filled with fear, guilt, and exhaustion. She made herself breakfast. Real breakfast, not just coffee gulped between tasks. Eggs, toast, a little fruit. She almost laughed at the novelty of sitting at her tiny kitchen table, chewing slowly, tasting the food. Afterward, she slipped on her sneakers and headed out for a walk. No work bag, no agenda. Just herself. The park near her apartment was alive with sound. Children chased one another with shrieks of laughter. Parents sat on benches, chatting and sipping coffee. A man jogged past with his dog tugging excitedly at the leash. Maya inhaled deeply, the crisp morning air filling her lungs. She hadn't realized how long she'd gone without pausing like this, without letting herself notice the world beyond hospital walls. The breeze rustled through the trees, sunlight danced on the pond, and for once, she didn't feel like she was running on empty. She found a bench and sat, closing her eyes for a moment. For weeks, her silence had been suffocating, but today, silence felt like peace. "Didn't expect to see you here?" a familiar voice said. Her eyes flew open, and there he was, Daniel, standing a few feet away, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. Maya laughed softly. "Didn't expect anyone to catch me actually relaxing." Daniel chuckled as he offered her a cup. "Cream, no sugar." Took a guess. Her eyes widened. "That's exactly how I take it. Guess I got lucky." His smile reached his eyes, and something warm stirred in her chest. They walked together along the winding path, sipping their coffees. The conversation drifted easily, light and playful in a way Maya hadn't felt in years. Daniel teased himself about his disastrous attempt at baking bread the week before. Maya admitted she had a habit of dropping her phone so often that her coworkers called her Butterfingers. They laughed until their stomachs hurt, the sound surprising Maya with how natural it felt. Her laughter wasn't forced, wasn't a mask for pain. It was real, bubbling up from someplace she thought had been lost forever. After a while, their steps slowed near the pond, its surface glimmering beneath the afternoon sun. Ducks floated lazily across, ripples expanding in circles. Maya wrapped her arms around herself, letting the breeze kiss her cheeks. "You seem lighter," Daniel said after a pause. His voice was thoughtful, not probing. Maya smiled, her gaze fixed on the water. "I am." Last night, something shifted. Saying it all out loud, letting them pray for me. It felt like setting down a suitcase I didn't know I'd been dragging everywhere. "That's the beauty of surrender," Daniel said quietly. "You stop trying to hold everything by yourself." And that's when God steps in. Maya's chest tightened, not in panic, but in recognition. It's strange, she admitted, but I'm starting to see myself differently. Not as someone failing all the time, but as someone still loved, even in the cracks. Daniel looked at her, eyes warm with pride and tenderness. That's not strange, Maya. That's truth, and truth has a way of making us free. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the air between them felt charged, gentle but undeniable. Maya's heart fluttered, not with anxiety this time, but with possibility. The thought startled her, but it didn't scare her. As the sun dipped lower, painting the park in shades of gold, they turned back toward the entrance. Maya's steps felt lighter than they had in years. Each laugh, each shared story, felt like another piece of her old weight slipping away. She wasn't healed all at once. She wasn't suddenly perfect. But she was lighter. She was laughing. She was walking beside someone who didn't see her as broken beyond repair, but as a soul worth loving, worth redeeming. And for the first time in a very long time, Maya believed it too. The hospital corridors hadn't changed. The same fluorescent lights hummed. The same beeping monitors filled the air. The same long shifts stretched ahead. But Maya had changed. She walked the halls with a steadier rhythm now, not rushing to carry more than she was meant to. She prayed silently before entering each patient's room, asking for strength, not to fix everything, but simply to be present. One evening, a patient squeezed her hand with watery eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "Not for the medicine." For just sitting here, Maya smiled softly, her heart swelling. She realized she no longer measured her worth by outcomes or by how much weight she could carry. Her worth had already been spoken over her by a God who loved her cracks as much as her strengths. Later that week, she left the hospital just as the sun began to set. The sky was painted in streaks of gold and pink, warm light flooding the street. She breathed deeply, letting the air fill her chest without the heaviness it once carried. Daniel was waiting by the church steps across the street, leaning casually against the railing with that familiar half-smile. "Long day?" he asked. "Of course," she said with a small laugh, "but not crushing." He raised an eyebrow. "That's progress." "Yeah," Maya admitted, her smile softening. "It is." They walked together down the quiet street, the evening settling around them. Their steps matched naturally, the silence between them comfortable. Maya thought back to the girl she had been only weeks ago, the one curled on her couch, whispering prayers that felt too weak to matter. The one who nearly collapsed under the weight of her own expectations. And now here she was, lighter, freer, not because her life had become easier, but because she'd finally let go of trying to carry it all alone. She glanced at Daniel, whose eyes carried both grief and gentleness, and realized healing wasn't about erasing scars. It was about learning to live whole, even with them. When they reached her apartment, Maya paused at the door. Her bag was inside, waiting by the wall as always. But tonight, she knew it wasn't a monster anymore. It was just a bag. It no longer defined her. She turned to Daniel, her voice quiet. "You know, I used to think strength meant never breaking. But I think strength is actually letting go." Daniel nodded, his gaze steady. "And trusting that God's shoulders are stronger than ours." Maya exhaled, a smile breaking across her face. Exactly. The weight Maya carried had nearly crushed her. But when she finally laid it down, she discovered the truth. She was never meant to hold it all. God's grace was strong enough to carry her, scars and all. And in surrender, she found not just rest, but joy, not just survival, but life, not just brokenness, but love. That night, Maya whispered a prayer of gratitude as she set her bag gently by the door. Thank you, God, for carrying me. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel crushed by the weight. She felt restored. The weight Maya carried was never hers to hold alone. When she laid it down, she discovered peace, strength, and love she never thought possible. And maybe that's the reminder for you today. You don't have to carry it all. God's grace is strong enough to hold you, too. If you enjoyed Maya's story, please subscribe, like, and share the video. For more inspiring stories, please visit our channel, Whole Hearts Restored.